All right. I'm here with Aaron Axelsen today. Aaron has been DJing for over 25 years. He co-founded San Francisco's pop scene, which helps debut artists like Billie Eilish, The Killers, and Calvin Harris in the Bay Area. He's a radio veteran, head of programming, is had over 2 decades at Live 105, launched Flood FM, a 24/7 commercial-free indie electronic station as part of his work at Flood Magazine. And he's also someone who has really been a supporter and a longtime champion of new music and helping emerging artists to really get their career launched. And so, of course, I was really excited to have him on the podcast today to share a little bit about his journey and his experience, kind of helping, who now are some of the most recognized names in the music industry, kind of get their launch. And so, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
No, I'm honored to be here, Michael. Thank you for reaching out. And I think you could pretty much summarize my career right there. So I think we're good. I think the podcast is over. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that was a fun conversation. I hope all the links to the show notes. And so, Aaron, maybe you could just start out for anyone who this is their first time connecting with you. Could you share just a little bit about your background and story and kind of what led you to working with, some of these artists like Billie Eilish, The Killers, Calvin Harris?
I've always had a strong passion and affinity for turning people on to new music. It started in high school, making crush mixtapes for cute indie rock new wave girls in high school and skater girls. And that's kind of how it started. I would spend all my time in high school making mixtapes. I think I lettered in mixtapes. So I ended up going to college radio. I did work in record stores in the Bay Area. And I just always had that, again, I love this connection with turning people on to new music that I love. And that's kind of the impetus of my career. That kind of started my path in the music industry. I started in radio as an intern at Live 105 in San Francisco back in the 90s. Worked my way up to music director, assistant program director, where I was there for 26, 27 years. Started pop scene. I mean, I just always been involved with really exposing, turning people on to new music that I'm really passionate about. And that's kind of the simplicity of my career path and how it all started.
Awesome. Well, I mean, especially nowadays, the world, there's so much new music. There's so much emerging talent. As someone who's had so much experience, like literally decades of experience helping artists break through and become, go from emerging artist to known artist, I'm curious what, from your perspective, you see as some of the biggest similarities and also some of the biggest differences and challenges that artists are facing right now as they kind of face that challenge of learning how to break through.
I think technology has been a blessing and a curse. I think it allows the average music connoisseur to create music in their bedroom, but it also makes it super easy and accessible to flood the music universe with music. Anyone can put something out. And so I think there's kind of like in exposing music and breaking through the clutter, I think there's a lot of sort of brand outlets where they filter through. So all this, like I kind of like filter through all this music that comes through. So there's brands that you trust, whether it's, Pitchfork, Flood, K-Rock, whatever, KCRW, DJs. I think that helps kind of, as the average consumer, you trust these brands and these personalities to bring you the best music. That I'm going to listen to 500 new releases and do the heavy lifting to bring you the best 10. So I think that process has not changed. I think now people can get their music out on TikTok and on social media, and the accessibility is there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to, still break through. The traffic still exists as it did 30 years ago. It still exists today. It's just the accessibility to get music out there is easier, but the challenges still remain the same. I don't think that's really changed that much in my career in 30 years of working in the music biz.
I love hearing that because in many ways it feels like things are always new and always changing. Like, wow, like this is the new age, the new era. But then you're also having the perspective of someone like yourself being like, there's different waves. But when you kind of look underneath the surface, like these waves sort of have the same structure as things that have happened before. So it sounds like what you're saying is that some of those same challenges of breaking through, the technology has changed it. It's easier to release your music and put it out. But some of those same challenges around like cutting through the noise and actually building those relationships still exist. So I'm curious, as someone who's worked with so many artists that have been able to kind of have that breakthrough, do you see any like patterns or similarities between the artists that you've worked with who like become household names and really kind of have that breakthrough versus artists who maybe have a more challenging time, like really getting that kind of breakthrough?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, I've always had this sort of innate intrinsic ability to hear something that I really like and kind of, I don't know, I just kind of, it's just sort of my spidey senses kind of sometimes just like, oh, when I hear something new for the first time, I just think there's a lot of there's a lot of elements that go to that timing where music is currently at, an artist that's maybe pushing the envelope, maybe one step ahead of the curve, but not 10 steps ahead of the curve, or not following 50 other bands that already exist. There's kind of that timing, that perfect place. For instance, let's take the Killers, an artist that I've helped and I've been part of their career. And that all started in 2003 when I was at Pop Scene DJing, and a new little upstart band from Las Vegas. They were recording Hot Fuss in Berkeley, and their manager at the time would bring them to Pop Scene. That's when I met Brandon, met the band, and they kind of hang out and request cool songs. And their manager gave me a demo of Mr. Brightside. I listened to it, and there was just something about the song that really resonated with me. I got so excited about it. I don't really know. It was just at the timing where music, the kind of the seismic shift of music was, the pendulum was kind of changing into that universe of dance punk and indie and post-punky stuff. And I don't know, it was just the timing of that song. And I debuted it on my Sunday night Soundcheck new music show on Live 105 as a demo in late 2003. And that song now has over a billion streams. But again, it's just all those elements that go into it. It was just the timing, the right place, just where trends were headed. And then, maybe down the road, once kind of those bands broke, maybe there were new bands that came up that already sounded like that. The scene was already saturated. So kind of the door kind of closed for other bands that were like a 10th generation sounding Killers. You know what I mean? So a lot of it's just timing. It's kind of hard to put it into structure, but it's just sometimes it's just the timing of, I don't know. It's just the conditions, the environment, the elements, where we're at musically. It's just kind of all those intangibles that kind of come together that make these songs kind of break through.
I like it. I mean, I think that's super helpful. And what that reminds me of is one of my favorite analogies. I think I even referred to it earlier, is like this idea that we're all kind of like surfers in the ocean, and there's these waves that sort of crest at a certain time. And it's sort of like that, you're talking about like the trends or like the waves where you kind of swim along with it at the right time. You can catch it and get this huge momentum boost, but it really is sort of the timing of like the wave as it's happening. And if you're a really good surfer, you can sometimes sort of anticipate the waves, but if you try to chase a wave that already passed, then like, its time has already passed. You call it the 10th generation, Killers.
That's a perfect analogy, because if you're too early, that wave will come crashing on you. And if you're too late, you're going to go over the swell. So exactly. It's just that timing. And sometimes it just happens. It's just that capturing lightning in a bottle. Remember Billie Eilish, she was an up and coming young artist, and Tom Windish, a booking agent at Windish Agency, now at Wasserman, he sent me her music, a track called Ocean Eyes, before she was even on Interscope. And it was just, wow, it was just enlightening. It was just, and I started playing that and booked her first show as an opening artist in San Francisco. But again, it's just, I don't know. Sometimes it's just, like you said, that right timing, and just the cosmos are all aligned, And I think it's important for an artist too, like I said, to be intrepid and be audacious. But, again, if you're too far ahead of the curve, you might be too esoteric to break through the clutter. And if you're, again, too behind the trends, it's just like that perfect, conditions that kind of fall into place. So
that's so good. One question that comes up for me is for, artists who are listening or watching this right now. One thing that I think is pretty common for us as artists is that we want to write music that we really feel authentically expresses who we are. And we also, in a lot of cases, we want to write something that's commercially viable, that's going to reach an audience, that's going to help us build a successful career. So I think sometimes artists kind of struggle with how do I plug into these trends or these things that I think are necessary in order for me to kind of have that breakthrough. But at the same time, they don't want to lose their authenticity and kind of what makes them them. And so I'm curious how you might suggest artists kind of get the best of both worlds? Is it possible for them to to be intentional and creative with how they're leveraging these upcoming trends and these things that are happening musically while also being true to themselves?
That's $1 million question. I think a lot of it comes down to the individual artist. What are your career goals, objectives? Do you want to just make music that you love and play at a coffee house? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, sometimes they have more loftier goals. They want to, I want to play arenas someday. So I think it comes down to the individual artist and their career objectives. But ultimately, the thing you need to focus on is your music, nothing else. Don't worry about getting signed. Don't worry about getting a manager. All that stuff will come if you just create incredible music. Good music will prevail. Eventually, someone will find you and your music if it's meant to be. But worry about your own music, your craft, making music that's passionate for you, and that's kind of should be your primary motivation. Eventually, if you want to take it to the next level, then you build a website and you start putting your music out on social media and you try to book shows. And there's all those kind of like baby steps that kind of go into career artist development. But I think the most important thing is being true to yourself and not worrying about making a smash hit for radio or TikTok or whatever. Just, make music that you love, and who knows, sometimes good things will happen and sometimes it won't be, but it comes down to the individual's goals of their artist and their career objectives.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is that it really at its root, the most important thing to focus on is getting the product and getting the music itself, to a point where it's really good. The quality is good and it's authentic to you. And in terms of the marketing and the website and some of those different things and the opportunities, like obviously those are extremely important too. But in order for those to really take root, it's important to start with the music and actually have something that is high quality, that is worth sharing.
100%. And there's all these little things you can do to kind of develop a base, and you can be kind of proactive. You can create your own scene. You can find friends that are like-minded musicians and build showcases, free shows at a coffee shop, and you can just kind of build that buzz on your own or a spark on your own. And again, managers, booking agents, labels are, they're going to find you if you start to get traction, and maybe you have a track on TikTok or Spotify that starts to pop. That always helps too. But again, it's just each artist has their own career goals. And I think it's important to just love your music and be true to yourself, and not, I'm going to change my style because now this style of music is hot. So I'm going to completely change and, become this, because this is the hot trend. That's not going to work either, I think. But there's also times artists can reinvent themselves too. There's an artist named Queen Herbie. She's amazing. And she's been around for a long time and under a different name. And she kind of created this new moniker and this new essence and this new kind of persona. And she's just blew up. I mean, she's massive. Now I had her at Pop Scene last year, sold out in a second. And then she came back and sold out the Fox Theater in Oakland, and her career trajectory shooting. So there's also veterans in that can kind of reinvent themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that too. I just have a new style or new vision. I want to try something new. So that's been a successful formula for artists as well, for those who've been around for a while.
Awesome. Cool. So, having had direct experience kind of with some of these artists, especially in these emerging artist stages when they're just getting started, I'm curious, did you see them doing anything unique or creative, or as it relates to the kind of that grassroots marketing approach and the connections you just described, sort of like building that initial buzz around you, doing artist showcases with each other? I'm curious for anyone that's watching this right now that's maybe in a similar space where they're just starting out, but let's say that their goal is that, maybe they don't want to be like the next Billie Eilish, but let's say that they have like career aspirations where they want to build a successful career and maybe just like 100th of the success. They just want to have a full-time, sustainable career with their original music, doing what they love. What are some creative ways that can kind of get that initial spark out?
Well, from my perspective, from the many different hats I wear, from a radio perspective, from a radio term, like I look for songs. I'm a really song-driven person. As a talent buyer booking shows, I want artists that are going to be able to draw, So there's a lot of different, it kind of varies from different professional industry, players and what they're looking for. So again, I fully believe that if you can create that buzz, if you make that song, you're able to cultivate a scene, you're able to make music videos, just do kind of engage with your audience, create clever ways to provide them incentives to kind of follow you as a supporter, like, you get them, you get, $5 off our next show, or I don't know, there's a way to engage with your fan base and develop that. There's just a myriad of things an artist can do, but a lot of it, you have to do the heavy lifting on your own. 100%. I think that's the misconception in the business a lot of times is, oh, I'm going to get a TikTok video on in my career. I'm going to be huge. And I can't tell you how many times that I've booked an artist that's had massive TikTok metrics that can't sell tickets. So there's a lot of variables. Like, that's huge, but there's one thing from someone sitting on their phone liking a video on TikTok versus someone that's going to make that investment to buy a $20 ticket, drive in their car to the city, park, and go to a show. That's a different kind of level of commitment. So again, like I can't emphasize enough that there's so many facets that go into artist development. You can't focus on one thing. There's so many different variables. But like I said, if there's one thing to take away from this conversation, it's just make good music, period. Just focus on your craft, make amazing music. And I think that will eventually open up a lot of inroads and a lot of opportunities for an artist.
That totally makes sense. So, it sounds like what you're saying is that ultimately getting likes on TikTok or getting some like initial engagement is like nice, but what really matters is like the level of connection, the depth of the relationship. And by focusing on, creating truly amazing music, that also creates that really deep relationship with your fans. And then you're actually nurturing those conversations, building a deeper connection is especially important because, TikTok views don't necessarily equate to people buying tickets and showing up somewhere, but your level of interaction with people directly increases that.
Think about some of the artists that have created an incredible, rewarding career that have never had a hit on the radio. Think about all the incredible artists, the iconic artists that have never been nominated for a Grammy. They have these incredible, prolific, impactful careers. So again, there's so many different ways to kind of lead your or kind of start your path in music. Obviously, radio and social media and TikTok and Spotify and DSPs, and that's very, very important. But there's, again, a lot of other variables that go into it. And sometimes there's great touring bands that just have that passionate base and just make a living off of selling merch and touring that never have any exposure on radio. So there's, again, like a lot of different ways that an artist can kind of exist in the music universe.
Awesome. One thing I'm curious about is just to hear a little bit more about Popscene and what you've created with that platform, and how did it start, and what has it kind of evolved into?
I think Popscene is sort of analogous with an artist in their career. What we've done with Popscene, we were 4 young indie rock Britpop dudes in San Francisco, had no idea what the hell we were doing, but we had this insatiable, passionate appetite for British indie music. I was working at a record store in Berkeley called Maud Lang Records, and I met my partners, Jeremy, Omar, and Eric, that kind of just stumbled into this record store, and we all just loved this burgeoning British indie scene, bands like Pulp and Blur and Suede and My Bloody Valentine and, the Charlatans UK. So we just that was our impetus to kind of create a club night where, there was a lot of house nights and hip hop nights and disco nights, but there wasn't like an indie club. There wasn't a proper indie disco. And we wanted a club night where you could dance to those bands, Britpop, but also dance to like Northern Soul and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles mixed in with, Radiohead and, Suede and David Bowie and all the. So we kind of created this mix of music and this really fun, unique dance party. And it just blew up. And we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And, it just kind of took off, and this is like in the mid 90s. Popscene turns 30 years old next year. And we didn't know we would be doing Popscene for 30 years. So anyway, it started, we built this scene, we built this brand, and people that liked music and bands would come out and dance. And so it wasn't really for 2 years until we started booking artists. And the first main artist that I booked really at Popscene was the Dandy Warhols. And this was like in 1997. And that kind of opened this whole new door that we were able to kind of create this blueprint, which we still run today, exposing new bands that we like, providing a platform for them, but also having a dance party. So we have DJs and new artists. And that's kind of our formula. And it's been working for almost 3 decades. So that's kind of, we kind of accidentally stumbled into this thing, but a lot of hard work and making flyers and hitting the pavement, and and then social media and doing all those kind of things. But we had to, it didn't just land on our laps. We had to create this, just like an artist or a band has to kind of create something. As promoters, we had to, and we can kind of capture, lightning in a bottle. We're the timing, and anyway, it's been an incredible ride. It's like for Pop Scene now, it's just my baby. My 3 partners have kind of left over the years, but I still love doing it, and I probably do 6 to 8 shows a month in the Bay Area. I just did a show last night in Salt Lake City. That's why I look so haggard. I slept like 3 hours. I had to wake up at 7 a.m. to take my 5-year-old to kindergarten. So, but it's, I still love doing it. I love finding new artists and providing a platform. And we've created a brand, Michael, that people trust. Oh, it's a Pop Scene Association. They trust, like a Pitchfork or Rolling Stone, or just, various brands out there that kind of people, we've accidentally, sort of unintentionally created a music brand in the Bay Area that people trust. And there's a lot of responsibility with that. We don't take that for granted. We're not complacent about it. We put a lot of work and passion and reinvention into our party. And it's been incredible. Some of the artists that we've helped, we've debuted in the Bay Area, from Amy Winehouse to Muse to Glass Animals, 1975, Sam Smith. It's kind of eye-popping, but we love doing it. It's a labor of love.
It's incredible, man. I mean, it just sounds like a lot of fun too, to be a part of. Gosh, it's been about 3 decades of doing that. And it sounds like the model is, having DJs next with artists and bands, selling tickets now to the shows. I'm curious, obviously there's a lot of people, a lot of indie artists who are watching and listening to this who are like, wow, like that sounds like a lot of fun, and might be interested in being a part of it or submitting their music. And I'm curious, I'm sure you receive a ton of music, but what's your favorite vehicle to receive music? And also from your perspective, like, what are some of like the best submissions? Like, how do you like to receive it versus some of the worst ways that people submitted it, so that people know kind of the best way to actually be featured on one of these platforms?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because this is something important that I want to touch upon, because obviously touring is such an important, pivotal part of an artist's career, especially now, more so than ever. I mean, artists, that's where they generate most of their income, is touring and merch sales. And so if you're a young artist wanting to play Pop Scene, or you want to play Rickshaw Stop, or you want to play Bottom of the Hill, you want to play any venue in San Francisco, it's really important when you reach out to a talent buyer to do your homework. A lot of the biggest mistake is that when artists kind of blanketly, or kind of in a blanket form, just blast out, I want to play this show to a venue. And it's like, maybe you're like a speed metal band and you're trying to open up for an indie pop artist. Those are those kind of things. You got to do your homework. You got to put the work in first, and reach out to a talent buyer after you've done all that, and look at, go to their calendar. Hey, so-and-so, there's a show you have coming up on this date. Our artist kind of would complement that. We kind of sonically sound like your headliner. We would love to open. Even if you have direct support, we'll be one of 3. We'll play for $50 and some drink tickets. And this is what we'll do to promote. And you got to show the talent buyer what you're going to do on your own platforms and how you're going to draw people. Because ultimately the talent buyer needs to fill their rooms. They got to keep the lights on. It's like they gotta have people in the rooms in these venues. So that's integral. That is a key part as an artist. So for me, when I'm booking Pop Scene, I love it when someone says, "Hey, Aaron, I was at your Ellie Goulding show last week. She's amazing. I had so much fun. Here's my artist. This is what I do. And you have this show coming up. I think we would be a great addition." I will listen to that artist 100 times out of 100 times, versus somebody just kind of sort of blindly sends that generic email out. "Hi, my name is so-and-so. We're in this band and we want to play your club." That's a delete. I'm sorry. I just don't have time to go through hundreds of those kind of emails. So do your homework, be respectful, and kind of let the talent buyer know how you are going to enhance that night, and why booking you is going to be a great addition to this night. Show them your music videos or shows that you've played, kind of like your resume. You got to kind of put together your portfolio to show a talent buyer, "Wait, look, we've played these shows. We can draw 30, 40 people. We're going to go out and flyer all the coffee shops." And, you got to show what these talent buyers, what you're going to do on your own to help bring people out, versus just, "Hey, I'm complacent. I'm entitled, book me, like you can't have that entitled attitude. Sorry. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So I hope that makes sense. That wasn't a crazy ramble, but.
Oh man, super helpful. hopefully it helps reduce some of the amount of noise signal. It improves the signal to noise ratio. It sounds like what you're saying is that what really cuts through is when it's clear that someone has done their research and they actually know what they're applying to, and that they are coming at it from a point of how they can contribute value, and they have their resume, they have their portfolio built up for it. And even just what we talked about earlier of like building relationships and building connections, like it's a lot better for them and for you if they're familiar with the organization, they've been to one of the shows, they've built those relationships, and that almost always is going to increase your odds of cutting through by 1,000 times, because you actually have built some of those connections, those relationships, and you're focused on providing value as opposed to just sort of being entitled and thinking, me.
I can't tell you how many times, Michael, that an artist has come up to me while I'm DJing and just, hey, really quickly, I want to introduce myself. Love pop scene. We love your Sunday night show sound check. Not that they have to kiss your ass. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for that common respect and them understanding my brand and my objective of what I do on my platforms, whether it's Flood FM, Pop Scene, Live 105. I mean, all the different things that I do, and just understanding that brand and finding a way that they can be a part of that. And I think that just speaks volumes when an artist kind of does their research already and kind of knows how they can fit into your objective, into your vision of what you're doing. And that's huge. That's paramount.
That's smart. Yeah. I think it's hard to do wrong if you approach someone with like actual gratitude or recognition or appreciation. Like as humans, like it's almost like a blossoming root, and like it's like fertilizer. It's like it's water. It like has this like beautiful effect when you genuinely share appreciation or gratitude or recognition. But so often like we don't necessarily approach people in that way. But when you do, like it's you almost never receive like a bad response if someone's genuinely like sharing recognition or appreciation for who you are.
Sometimes it still doesn't work, but at least you have that dialogue and say, and I will always say that, hey, this is why I can't get you on this show. Sometimes it's tough because sometimes when I book a show, an artist already has direct support involved. So there's not maybe a lot of open slots. Sometimes an booking agent will come to me and say, hey, Aaron, we need to find local support for this show. And then I kind of go to reach out to, I have a talent pool, a list of local artists that I really like. And I'll go through them and pick the ones that I think would make most sense for a show. So, again, it's just doing your thing and building your base and playing out and creating things, doing house parties, do a warehouse party, do a monthly free, session at a local clothing store. There's like creative ways to kind of get your music and your band out there. And ultimately as a talent buyer, radio host, whatever, we're going to find you. I think if you're doing something that's creating an organic buzz, we will definitely find you.
Awesome. Yeah, makes sense. One thing I'm curious about hearing your perspective on is as it relates to like indie artists versus record labels, and kind of at the time of recording this, there's been a big movement towards like indie and independent artists and like indie labels. And as someone with 30 plus years of experience, I'm sure you've seen a fair amount of deals go really well, and if many go very wrong. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on, for like an independent artist, let's imagine that they're here right now and they have started to like generate some buzz, and they started to, to gain some of this traction, and maybe some of these opportunities are starting to bubble up. What's your viewpoint for right now? Like how can an artist best move forward, and what should they kind of be aware of to avoid a bad situation?
Again, it comes down to the artist's goals and objectives. A lot of the major labels these days, I think they do a lot of data mining. Their A&R scouts are just looking on spot. They're looking at metrics. There's sort of an algorithm that kind of goes into finding artists that have this momentum in a sort of a social, in a kind of a DSP kind of, metric way. And a lot of artists will sign, major labels will sign those bubbling artists that have kind of are developing on that spectrum. I think there's a lot of great independent labels for independent minded artists that can join an incredibly strong independent label that can kind of meet their career goals better and kind of on a smaller scale. Maybe if you're Interscope or Epic Records, you're going to have, these high, expectations and numbers you need to hit. I think sometimes indie labels maybe are a little more lenient with that. There's a great music independent label platform called AWOL that I just love. They do a lot of incredible artist development, and they do a lot of artist development in their own world before they even go to radio. They probably only take maybe like 2 of 10 artists to radio, but they still put a lot of artist development into their artists and to help them tour and develop them on, social media and DSPs. I really like that platform, but there's still a lot of great independent labels that still exist, Sub Pop, and there's so many incredible independent labels as well. So I think now there's a lot of artists that don't even sign. They have a good manager and they put out music on their own. So there's that option that didn't exist a long time ago. So if you're able to, like put out music on your own too, and if you have, I think having a good manager is integral part of that equation if you're not going to go to the label route. But there's just a lot of different options, and again, it comes down to what your career goal is. And, so.
That's super helpful. Well, Aaron, man, it's been really fun talking, and it's clear to me just in the short conversation that we've had how much of a passion you have for what you do in music, and so I really appreciate the dedication and like so much, like 30 years. It's like it's a legacy. It's amazing. It's if a organization sticks around for that long, you know that they're doing something has real roots and it has real authenticity to it. So
I appreciate it, Michael. And I also really quickly wanted to, one of my other big part of my career post radio is working with Flood magazine. That's been a blessing. That's been an incredible partnership. I've been a huge fan of Flood from their filter days. That's always been one of my favorite brands. So the opportunity to work with Flood when that came up and launch Flood FM, which is this 24/7 global streaming commercial-free indie station. You can get it on any platform or on your smart speaker. And I love doing this station. It's so fun and kind of without the pressures of ratings and commercial radio. So this has been a really fun kind of post-commercial radio career project for me. So I just wanted to give a shout out to my homies, Alan and Randy and the whole Flood team. And but Flood FM, if you get a chance to check it out, I think you'll dig it. It's 24/7 new and classic indie. And every week we have an artist take over the station with their own guest radio show. We've had Spoon and Slowdive and Maya Hawk, and it's some really big artists anchor their own guest radio show. So it's called, floodfm.com. I wanted to give that a shout out.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and share some advice for emerging artists. And for anyone that's watching or listening to right now who is interested in connecting more with the pop scene, culture, community, Flood FM, or you personally, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
DJAaronAxelsen.com. That's my website. You go there and you can find Flood FM. You can find my Sunday night indie show Soundcheck, which is on Live 105, which I've been doing since 1999, every Sundays from 8 to 10. Pop Scene, email address, all the good stuff's there. I might do some DJ mixes. And DJAaronAxelsen.com.
All right, perfect. And like always, we'll put the links in the show notes for easy access. And Aaron, thanks again for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm so haggard on a 3-hour sleep, but I had a great time talking with you, Michael.
I wasn't even aware of it until you mentioned it. And I totally understand. I've got a 6-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, and a 2-year-old daughter. So there's plenty of sleepless nights.
You get it, Michael.
Yeah.